Any other thoughts about quality of life?
Can this is the optimist view on this one too. I hope that's okay. A couple of them are public education. I would say we're world class, and for our size, I'd say we're probably in the top in the country. And I think most people, and if you live here all your life, you don't realize how good we are. That's one. I would say flood fighting. When we fight a flood, we do it the best any place in the United States, which is unfortunate because we're so good at it after 3 years in a row. But seriously, when the people that turn out, it's an awesome experience to be a part of. So to me, that's another one. Anyway, so there's a list of things that we're already at that. And like you said, I really like for a city our size, are we the best at it? That's a great way to look at it. So I think I've tried to look at the optimistic. There's a lot of things where we already are, but now we want to view in the future. What are the other things? Thank you.
I think, building on that is, how much energy, besides the money we spend on fighting floods, being safe was a high priority, but then we can start to evaluate how much energy is being used on fighting these floods, and how can we harness and divert that energy to building this world-class community, and, helping to quantify some of that, or at least kind of lead the way so people can see a big light at the end of this tunnel. So, okay, we're going to be safe, and we're going to have 3 more months to really do what we want to be doing as far as building community and your own business. But that's a huge amount of resources that's being used right now, and it's necessary. But let's, by making it safe, we can start to be proactive and leading developing a pathway for the people to say they don't not only want to embrace their environment. I think we're looking for kind of not only entrepreneurs but pioneer type of people that are looking for a place that gets it. And so there's a lot of cities around the country that don't get it. Maybe they don't have the opportunity to get it. We are in a better position, and Doug Burgum says it a lot. We don't necessarily have to be the earliest adopters, but we can kind of take in and see what works around the world, and then we can apply it here because we have the resources, have the educated workforce, and we can leapfrog ahead. And again, it goes back to that city leadership. And it's not from the officials, it's from the people that build that city.
Just to build on that, one thing I heard in the group that I was sitting with is, they said from a quality life perspective, this area has an extremely skilled workforce. And they're also kind of talking a little bit about, how higher education ties into that. And then, since we have such a skilled workforce, can we work with, that group of people to incubate businesses? And I think, from an economic perspective, it's great pulling in the large corporations and bringing in those jobs. But I think if you're really going to have that character within your community, you've got to incubate some of those small businesses and provide that opportunity. And I think, with that skilled workforce, that's a fantastic place to start building, using some of that knowledge.
Nicole?
Yeah, I'd echo what Joe was just saying. That was the first thing my group, when we were to talk about vision, is they said quality of life, and so I try to get them to define that. And I was surprised how fast they immediately jumped into economy, or the economic welfare of the Fargo-Moorhead region as part of their definition of quality of life. The other thing that I was surprised that they called immediate attention to was actually clean air, and not to take that for granted. I had a really diverse group, those that grew up in the area, those that moved back to the area, and diverse age group. And all of them had traveled, or quite worldly with their travels, and that was the first thing they said was how much they enjoy the clean air.
So you've kind of hit on a word that we also heard several times over the last couple of days that I think you could help clarify for us, because we've never been in a place where from so many different people we heard how clean your community is. And the very first group we met with was a group of youth. They were high school and college students, and it came up probably 3 times in that meeting, and it continued to show up even through last night. So maybe we can spend just a couple of minutes talking about what that means to have a clean community.
It brings a couple of things to my mind. We're Mike maybe alluded to it a little bit. We need to target some of our
Need one of these.
Our buildings, just target certain areas around the city that our dumps, our trash, one of your predecessors, Craig, had a cleanup. I don't know how he turned that. Vince Lindstrom did that. And what was his term? He did a clean up the city. He did it was kind of with our cleanup week, and he said, clean it up, company's coming. Something to that extent. And everybody was supposed to get their yards in shape, get their trash out of the yard, get their old cars out of the backyard. The businesses were trying to get cleaned up, and that's probably a campaign we could start again. And then I think it goes a little bit to what we've been trying to do with our sign code. We're trying to clean up the clutter that we have in businesses. We're not trying to tie their hands from promoting their business, from being in business, but we're trying to clean up the clutter from having 16 signs on a strip mall, from having a business that's got signs on the windows, on the roof, on the front, on the side, on the, this size, that size, 20 feet tall. I mean, we're trying to just clean some of that up because there are communities out there that have done that are still in business, very healthy economy, and they're surviving with a little less clutter. And then I think it's just the, again, when we went non-smoking, that helped a lot, and we were the leader in that really throughout the state. You've seen that several of the cities throughout the state have followed us. I was just in a Streeter, North Dakota, and I walked in the bar, and it was full of smoke, and I thought, where is this? I mean, I just stepped, it was like Back to the Future. It was, all of a sudden, I went in a bar, and I thought we were done with this. And they said, oh, no, we can have smoking here. And they can. And I thought, you take it for granted that you walk in a bar in Fargo, and you can go have a beer, and you don't have to sit with smoke around you. So we take that for granted, but I think to help promote that with the cities. So I think that's just all brings to my mind what we're trying to promote and what these youth, as we're changing, what they want to stay in Fargo.
Linda?
I think one thing that's really helped that, and maybe it's at a level that kids don't necessarily, it's more subconscious, but the years that we've done the neighborhood revitalization projects throughout the older areas of the city, I think there's been a real intentional effort not to let poorer neighborhoods decline and pick those distressed properties, and once you pick one property on the block, then the rest. I mean, that it doesn't matter what your income level is, that Midwestern, clean up your yard thing kind of kicks in, and I think what we've done is we've prevented a lot of decline that could have been here. And that, like I say, that's been intentional, and apparently that's being noticed at some level.
I noticed that when I travel. You don't have to go very far before you begin to notice communities, even in the Midwest, that don't have the standards that we have here. And I think, the junk cars in the yard, parking on the lawn, simple things like that. You go into Florida, and it's everywhere. Everybody parks on the lawn. You don't care where they're at. But you get into Idaho and a lot of western Montana communities, it's the same darn thing. There's a lot of trash. There's a lot of lack of pride in neighborhood and community. And one of the things that I heard loud last night was really pride in our community. And I think that's almost an understated thing. We can go to the next level because we have enormous pride in where we are, and we're willing to take it to the next step.
And our group had also heard a lot of questions about blighted commercial property, that because we have the neighborhood revitalization program, but it seems like whether there's an ordinance, if there's they're given latitude on the commercial properties, that it was a question that kept coming up, that I can think of a couple in North Fargo that are right across from each other that are not getting attention if the property owners are there or they're not there, and they've been sitting empty for many years unused, and that was quite a conversation.
Yeah, I think we have a different standard that we need to address with commercial properties. Some of those places have been closed for 10 years and boarded up, and that's not acceptable.
5-foot high grass.
Yeah, they should. And we should talk about that as we move forward. And I know Ron Strand, he just says, we just need an ordinance. We need something that we can go after. We just need things that we can put some teeth in it, and then we'll figure it out. And a little bit of it's lack of staff, and as the city's grown, it's hard to get to all this. But we should identify 5 to 10 a year and address them.
And from my point of view too, based on the conversations I had with our first focus group, the more the youth kids when they're mentioning this idea of having a clean community, is I think the overall perception is that we are a very clean community, but there's pockets, there's maybe areas that we could take a look at. Talked a little bit about like your entrance corridors coming into the community, like for example, Main Avenue coming into downtown probably isn't the best. You know, there's things that could be done there. Last night, some of the kids were talking about there's a lot of emphasis on new development south and west, and because of that, maybe there's not the same kind of focus on the older neighborhoods, and some of those maybe are going into decline, so it's not forgetting those areas. It was interesting, a meeting that we had yesterday with economic development, you know, this idea that we got a clean community. It's that first impression. When you got a business coming into our community and they're looking at it for the first time, that's the thing they're likely to go away with is, you know, what did it look like? And so there could be all kinds of things here in terms of opportunities, but if their impression of our city was not a good one, we may not be able to track them. So it is definitely something that's very important. I see this being something very high priority in terms of this moving forward.
Can I ask a question? It sounds like last night and the last few meetings have been very positive. A lot of things have been talked about. I've heard the flood mentioned a couple times. If someone had to put a percentage of how much discussion there was on flood, even at last night's meeting, I'd be curious what that might be.
If it was Denny, it was 100%.
Craig, I think from my perspective, I think we sort of tried a little bit intentionally to de-emphasize the flood and not have it the focus. It's number one on the list, and I think there was a table that talked about it, so it certainly, you know, of all the high-profile things that you normally would talk about, it's entered in. I'm guessing most cities do this. It's not even on their list.
I wonder if I maybe take a crack at this. When we actually went out and did our interviews with community leaders, business leaders, those kind of things, I would say it's absolutely the top priority across the board. That's the one thing that we have to get resolved. To me, it wasn't a big surprise that last night that the people that we had at the meeting really weren't looking at it that closely. And I think that's a testament to how well the city has actually done in terms of dealing with our flood mitigation, the challenges that we've had. There's a lot of faith that they've had in our community in terms of making sure that we've got a safe community when we do have these flood events. And so they're focused more on, well, quality of life issues. We want a safe community. We want to have more opportunities and those kind of things. But they understand the importance of flood mitigation, that is the overriding challenge that we have moving forward. So that's just my take on what we heard last night.
I want to add to that because I think this is really an important issue for the city and the leadership especially. And that is, I think particularly the business community is waiting for some clear signal from the city that the leadership has their arms around mitigation, has a strategy that's real, could be funded, could be implemented, that has a chance for showing incremental success. And I think there's a growing frustration. They feel the communication from leadership hasn't been all that good, and they're beginning to question leadership, and they're worried about long-term investment, or they're worried